You okay? You need a minute? Cool. Okay. Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about Extinction. And let me tell you, and you'd kind of think this would be obvious, going extinct is a bad thing. And driving yourselves extinct? In 70 million years, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. At least we had an asteroid. What's your excuse? You're headed for a climate disaster, and yet every year governments spend hundreds of billions of public funds on fossil fuel subsidies. Imagine if we had spent hundreds of billions per year subsidizing giant meteors. That's what you're doing right now. Think of all the other things you could do with that money. Around the world, people are living in poverty. Don't you think helping them would make more sense than, I don't know, paying for the demise of your entire species? Let me be real for a second. You've got a huge opportunity right now. As you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic, this is humanity's big chance. So here's my wild idea. Don't choose extinction. Save your species before it's too late. It's time for you humans to stop making excuses and start making changes. Thank you.
Good morning to you, and many thanks for tuning in to Dissect TV. This is the Morning Dew Show, and today we are talking about climate. Remember, this is the section where we talk about issues affecting us, the society, and everybody else. And today, I'm humbled to have a team from We Don't Have Time. On my near left, I have Patrick. I also have Simon Peter and Timothy. Together, we'll be discussing about climate. So welcome. Remember, you can send us your feedback on the scrolls running below your screen, and we'll appreciate to get back your feedback. So karibuni sana to the show. This is the Morning Dew Show. I'm your host, Wairimu Mugo. Please stay put. So let's talk about climate, but before that, let's know who do I have in here.
Asante sana Wairimu for hosting us. My name is Patrick Kiadi. I'm the country director for We Don't Have Time Kenya. And not only Kenya, our office is the one which is hosting the African office.
It's quite humbling to be here at Dissect TV to talk matters climate change. And my name is Peter Kamau from We Don't Have Time. I'm the head of operations on the Kenya chapter. Thank you.
Great. My name is Timothy Ndegwa, and I'm glad to be here. I work with We Don't Have Time, Kenyan chapter, as the team leader. Looking forward for an interesting engagement.
Beautiful. It's an all-men affair.
Sure.
I'm about to say we need to that. However, when we talk about climate, Simon, what are you talking about?
When you talk about climate is entirely the weather patterns. Okay, the weather patterns studied over a particular period of time. And the climate is houses us, whatever it encompasses is simply, what can I say in a simple language? Okay, the study of weather patterns over a long period of time in a simple language. Yeah.
And when you say global warming and climate, are we talking about the same in one thing? To Timothy.
Okay, great question. When you talk about climate change, we're talking about the change of weather patterns, as Peter had alluded earlier, the change of weather patterns from a given period of time. But when we talk about global warming, we talk about the increase in the temperatures of the air due to emissions of greenhouse gases. These are the sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, which are emitted by industries. When these gases are emitted in the air, they increase the temperatures of the environment, and that bring about the global change, whereby the temperatures of the environment get to increase. Now, which then results to climate change. When temperatures increase, there is change in weather patterns. Yeah.
How does this affect us, Patrick?
Yeah, it really affects us in so many ways. And in analysis in the ground, we can see how we are being affected in one way or the other.
I would like to add something on that. Climate change causes issues like heat waves in countries like India and countries like places like California. Something else is increased desertification. In places like in Kenya, the northeastern part of Kenya, there's increased drought. So that's how maybe climate change affects us in one way or another.
Also, if I can add on what my colleagues are saying, climate change results to extinction. There are animals that have gone to extinction, like the likes of polar bear. That climate change is sort of I can give an analogy of say a virus affects your body. Your body can react in two ways. It either succumbs to the virus or it fights back the virus. Now when the human activity causes distress to the planet Earth, now it's the planet now trying to react from our activities by trying to flush us out. And that is now we see such animals, since now the planet is no longer a habitable place, they go to extinct. So we have, as a result of climate change, there are animals that have gone extinct, like polar bear and also the dinosaur that is well known. Yeah, thank you.
When we talk about activities, what are some of these activities that we are talking about? Could mention a few maybe.
Okay, starting with me, we are giving the awareness that people they should care of their environment in one another. Starting with you, starting with me, starting with my team, and everybody who is listening us out there.
Before we get to what we can do, let us see what activities is humankind doing that is influencing to the global warming.
Okay, in that regard, I would say climate change naturally changes, but extensively it is human induced. Like it has increased over the pre-industrial period, that is over like 50 or 60 years ago. This is when there was an increase in the number of industries all over the world, and the fumes that come from these industries are carrying carbon dioxide and other dangerous greenhouse gases. It is dangerous to the environment, and they cause the global warming effect. Something else is deforestation. Deforestation, of course, forests are known to be carbon offset machines because they suck the carbon that is within the air that will be reduced, so that the greenhouse effect is not quite huge. And so people cut down trees for particular reasons. They lock down trees, and so that increases. When you plant trees, they can offset the carbon, and so that is another thing. Okay, as a solution, though we are not yet there, but cutting down of trees is one thing. Another thing is the use of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels such as coal. Coal is known to be the largest emitter or a great threat to climate change, and maybe petrol and diesel are some of them as well that we as humans have discovered or we mine, and they contribute largely to the climate change effect.
Mainly we talk about climate change affecting a human, but does it also affect other types of nature?
Yeah, of course, yes. They really affect the general planet of us in one way or the other.
So, for instance, say there is rise of temperatures. Of course, there are some plants that will not thrive well. Say, for example, when there is increased temperature, there is decrease in the amount of rainfall that we get, and this causes drought and some plants not to grow. And as a result of, say, as my friend or my colleague had earlier said, when there is emissions of these greenhouse gases, it results to acidic rainfall that affects the acidity of the soil, which then affects the amount of which affects the plants that are that come from the soil, and this in turn causes diseases such as cancers because of the fact that those plants become carcinogenic. So in a way, it's a vicious cycle that that causes, that these problems trickle down to affect the ecosystem of humanity. Also, animals as well, they get affected because if the plants get the acidity rainfall, it also affects their well-being. So it's a long vicious cycle that makes us now champion for climate change. Yeah.
Let's talk about renewable energy, but hold on to that thought. We'll be coming back after a short commercial break. Don't go too far. This is the Morning Dew Show. I'm your host, Wairimu Mugo. Today, the conversation is about climate. We are coming back in a
Listen, there's a distant sound closer. Soon it's all around. Hear me, time is running out. Come on, tell them what it's all about. We're running out of time, we're running out of air. We gotta keep it clean. Show me that you care. Wherever you are, you got to wake up. United as a nation. Come on. We don't have time to wait. There's a world to say. Right or wrong, how will you behave? Do the right thing, as they used to say. More than ever, that is true today. Be part of the solution, switch it up. For future generations, level up. If our planet dies, how will you console me? We don't have time to ignore the signs. We don't have time. No time. We don't have time. No time. We don't have time. No time. It's Kingsville Creative. We don't have time. No time. We don't have We don't have time. No time. We don't have time. No
back, and many thanks for staying put to the Morning Dew Show. I'm Wairimu Mugo. Remember, this is the segment where we talk about issues affecting our society and us in general. And today we are all about climate. I have a team from We Don't Have Time, and together we are conversing on climate. As earlier we were talking about global warming and other issues affecting us. In matters climate, and as I remind you, on my left I have Patrick, Simon, Peter, and Timothy. These are team from We Don't Have Time. Before we went on break, we were talking about renewable energy. Take it up from there, Peter.
Well, renewable energies, in other words, mean green energy.
Yes.
One of them could be solar, another one could be wind, harnessing wind power. Our country boasts in Africa as the leading wind farm, country with the largest wind farm in the continent, and that is the Turkana wind farm project. Another one is the Ngong Forest wind power project, and this is just a conversion from an alternative from the conventional fuel sources of energy, maybe petroleum, and which are not sustainable or that contribute largely to climate change or otherwise influencing such as the petroleum or coal may be a high contributor to the global warming in a way through the production of the fumes. So the sustainable ones, solar and wind, are quite friendly to the climate. And so they actually help bring down the effects of global warming and climate change, help tackle climate change.
Yeah, well, for sure, those could be normal to maybe a person at a certain level of the society. But to my grandmother down there in the village, they could be wondering, how do I achieve solar? How do I achieve wind? So what are some of the things that people who are, or let's call them maybe normal people, could use to help or can use as renewable energy? Timothy, before we come back to you.
It's okay.
Okay, great. The most common ones is the use of solar panels that people used before electricity. You know, people got connected to the electricity. So people harness power through the solar energy, and they use that to, for home chores. So that can be that is a great alternative for electricity, which goes a long way to mitigate the effects of climate change, as Peter had alluded earlier. Because with fossil fuel, it leads to emissions of the greenhouse gases, which in turn increases the temperatures in the air, leading to global warming, hence causing climate crisis. So if people can be able to make use of the solar panels as their source of energy, which now we call it green energy, it will go a long way to help mitigate the effects of climate change. Yeah.
You want to add something?
Not really. You said it all.
When in our first section, we had talked about food, and I want us to diverge further into how climate change affects food supply and how a normal farmer, especially those who are farming, what can they do to stop, especially maybe soil erosion and some other effects of climate change like that.
Okay, talking about food production or food security, of course we plant these on the soil and within our surroundings and our farms. And when you talk about these are climate crisis, it means that maybe there is an effect, or one of them could be as a result of the climate crisis, could be desertification. When an area is hit by desertification, it means that no crops could grow in that area, and so the farming practices in that area could be greatly affected. Most of the parts of the country, we used to plant at particular times of the year, or even we used to know the harvesting and planting seasons. But currently, many farmers don't know when to plant or when to even possibly harvest, due to maybe it rains whenever you're not expecting, or even it's probably dry whenever you're not expecting. And so food security in that way is largely affected.
Maybe if I can add something on that. Among one of the effects of climate change that affects food production is lack of rainfall, which majorly is attributed to erosions. When there are no trees, when there is no grass, the sand and the water get carried away. But there is several techniques that have been developed to mitigate this, and one of it being the half moon technique that is being implemented by one of our partners. They're called Just Digita, whereby they come up with some holes with the design of a moon. That is why it's called the half moon technique, whereby the soil and the water, they are retained there such that even when there is erosion, that water is not carried away and the sand is not carried away. So that when there is drought, the farmers can be able to make use of that water and that soil, to enhance food production. And now through that, it becomes a remedy for the effects of climate change. Yes.
Still on food, on food, those are some remedies they could use. What are some of the things these farmers are doing, maybe with knowledge or without knowledge, and are causing maybe extreme results of climate change?
Okay, one of them may be a farmer might collect litter from his land and then decides to decompose it through the use of burning of that litter. When he burns that litter, it produces carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which then increases the temperature, which is one of the greenhouse gases. And now the implication of that is that it will increase the atmosphere in the air, which then contributes to global warming. That is one way. And the other way is probably a farmer might clear his land by cutting down trees in an attempt maybe to expand his area of farming, which, as Peter had said earlier, they act as a remedy of the emissions in the air. And now through that, they will not be able to mitigate the carbon emissions in the air. So those are just but ways that in which farmers, maybe without their knowledge, they contribute to the climate crisis that we are in. Yeah.
Could there be more?
Okay, yeah, he's talked about deforestation or clearing down of trees, of which causes soil erosion. Something else maybe I may add is poor farming techniques or farming methods. If you don't exercise a rotational method of farming that will keep the soil compact, of course, that will have the soil loose and to be carried down by the water flow when it rains. Yeah.
All right. This is the morning dew show. Remember, the conversation today is about climate, and I have a team from We Don't Have Time. Together, we are trying to talk about to see on the issues climate, and I'm wondering, is there a law in Kenya that is affiliated to climate change, or a law that maybe protects the climate? If I could state it that way.
Yeah, there is one. It's Act. It's called Act 2016, Cap 2016. Yeah, and that mandates the Climate Change Council to mitigate the emissions of the greenhouse gases. Sorry. This came as a result of a conference, or rather a protocol that is called Kyoto Protocol, that came into effect 2005, but it was started in 2001 but ratified in 2005, whereby the country members were given a mandate to be able to regulate the amount of emissions of greenhouse gases. So this act gives the government and organizations as well as corporates a mandate to regulate the amount of greenhouse gases that are emitted in the air. So yeah, there is one.
So if and I want to take that back to industrialization. Maybe from there we could assist companies, especially who emit gases to the air. How best could they maybe emit their gases?
Okay, unfortunately what you have is law on paper or law in our huge law books, and they're not followed to the letter. Yeah, so you find that there could be a law mitigating the amount of emissions that a certain company can emit, but you find that that company, due to corruption cases, or they are not able to, maybe, okay, it could be quite expensive to regulate the amount of carbon emissions that they are producing. So you find that they are corrupt enough to make sure that they get away with it in a way that then they continue putting these gases into the air. There's a global outcry of making ecocide a law, whereby you want to see that the ecosystems and the planet largely taken care of by the laws. And one thing I should think that we can do is exert pressure and influence these leaders and our policymakers to make sure that these laws are followed to the letter. That is the greatest problem. Otherwise, there are laws.
As a startup company, what strategy should I have to my gas emissions? What should it look like for safe emission of gases? That is, I'm starting up a company that maybe could be producing some gases in there, not even maybe gases, but some litter or anything. What should the plan look like for me?
I think we should encourage them to follow the right laws which are there, and they follow the right regulation that the government have outlaid for them, like the NEMA and everything. And I think their input, in case they follow the right laws, it will play a very big role to all of us.
I know our Kenyan people don't like reading,
don't.
so let's try to assist them, especially a startup.
Yeah.
And it's just a small company, maybe in a go down. So what should be their plan look? What should the plan look like for them?
Okay.
Having in mind even the cost implications.
Yeah,
Are
and
there cost maybe friendly things they could do?
yes. There are several strategies that have been laid down, and one of them is treating the waste before disposing it. Yes, and it's just that people choose to, evade that out of ignorance. But the government has made it as affordable as possible, because by the fact that it is also aware of the effect that waste will have if it will be released and without being treated. So as a startup, you should put into consideration having a mechanism whereby if you are releasing waste, you should not release that waste before it's treated, such that so that when it goes out there, it will be safe to the environment, and that includes the rivers and the other water bodies around us. Yes.
Not only rivers, in general, all of them. So many dump sites like in Karioko, different places in Nairobi. I think we should all work together to how they manage the effects of the dump site and everything.
Okay, yeah, it's true. Maybe water treatment or the treatment of this liquid effluents, because once they are let out untreated, some of them seep into the ground and the soil, and of course they reduce the quality of the soil. And of course, for the solid waste, that is another way to make sure that you collect or even segregate the waste improperly. Some can be recycled, some can be disposed of in another way. Organic, inorganics, and the plastics, they should be segregated in a way that they are able to be disposed of properly. Yeah.
Is it hopeless to stop climate change? I want you to ponder on that as we take on a short commercial break. Don't go too far. This is the Morning Dew Show. I am your host, Wairimu Mugo.